Hello YouTube, pipe smoking plumber here today. Just actually doing a VR, kind of a continuation from the VR to Padre Piper. I did mention the spiritual side of things and kind of just skipped over that. So that's why I'm smoking the General, because sometimes these spiritual stories can get a little long. And in it, I am smoking some Captain Black's Gold. So stay in this sort of the same storyline of old school. Anyway, I just thought, this is such a kind of a hard subject, and when I'm watching the pipe community, I do appreciate people sharing their stories and stuff like that they're going through life. That's really awesome to share and get to know you guys. But sometimes you just want to keep it light, and when it comes to the idea of spiritual things, that sometimes can get a little messy, I guess. But I don't know, I just tossed it around and thought, maybe I'll just tell you about my quest and how it started, and just leave it there and see what you think. So basically, and kind of not intertwine it, I won't go into a lot of stories. I'll just kind of keep the highlights. So basically, I was born into a Catholic family. My dad was Austrian and my mom was Ukrainian. So I just remember going to church from a very young age. I got baptized, and my mom and dad, we'd always go every Sunday to Catholic church, and I was raised in a Catholic church. So God has always been a part of my life. Not that I was connected. I was a very mischievous kid. I loved to get into trouble. Not bad trouble like, but just, I don't know. I always wanted to see the bad guy win. You watch shows and stuff, and I'm glad that the good guy wins, but inside I kind of, if he would have just did this, if he would have just made that move, he would have made it, and it's TV. But I kind of liked that, not being good all the time. I had a real eye for, like I said, nothing major. I didn't want to hurt people or that, but kind of more on the practical side, like practical joke side. I don't know, I just, just have a tendency for some reason, and I think we're born with that inside, but just kind of, to veer off the path. So anyway, quick story. So I went to church my whole life. I was intrigued. My favorite part of the Mass was actually when they did I remember as a kid, when they have the wine and they're preparing the communion, all the neat kind of ritual that they go through with it, and the washing of the cups and the drinking of the wine. So believe it or not, I used to do that as a kid. I just thought that was pretty intriguing. So anyway, I went to Catholic school and just lived a normal life. I was a normal kid. We did go to church, but I still drank and lived life, enjoyed, just enjoyed, again, lighthearted drinking, having fun, doing what kids do. So I was a normal kid, and I would still go to church on Sundays. So I thought that was it. God's great. He grades on a curve, so even though we know we're not perfect, he still kind of overlooks those things, and away you go. It's funny though, when I was younger, I always had not only did I have a draw to kind of the mischief side, I also had a draw towards God, and every time I'd feel kind of pulled, to be good, to try to explore God's avenues more, I would just really, no way. I remember one time resting on my bed. I was around 16, and again, not a voice out of the blue, but your conscience. That's another thing, I've always had a very strong conscience. When I do something wrong, it's like the bells ring. Stop that, don't do that. And it was probably a good thing that I did have that conscience. But when I was resting one time, I remember my conscience kind of saying, you should maybe look into the ministry. And I remember verbally saying to myself, are you kidding? Because most of the thing I had with ministry was Catholic, and the priests, they were old and they were grumpy and they were kind of sickly, the ones that I knew anyway, and they couldn't get married. And I remember saying, there's no way I'd want to do that in my mind, and I still remember that today. So anyway, I'd get these little pangs, and as time went on, I left at 18 to move out. So I moved out to Calgary, and at that time, actually, our neighbor, our old neighbor, he was really old. His wife was sick up in Calgary here, so we went to visit, and I actually had a Bible, so I just decided to read the Bible from front to back. So I'm 18 years old on my own, and I started in Genesis and read it all the way through. So when I read it, of course, I just read it, and some of it was boring, some of this didn't get it all, but it did again strike me. Wow, there's something going on here, something a little more serious than just going to church every week and everything's okay. So that brought me to quite an interesting odyssey. There would be people, so I kind of prayed a prayer and I said, Lord, send some Christians into my life and, see what happens. So anyway, quite interesting. I did meet quite a few different Christians from different denominations. I mean, from charismatic Pentecostal to, just to evangelicals, but all at different levels, to Presbyterians, to Catholics. It's just like a hodgepodge of these different denominations. Baptists, some didn't drink, some didn't do this, and kind of being a newbie. At that time I sold cars, and one of the guys that worked there was a car salesman, but he was a Pentecostal, so he invited me to church. And I remember seeing the first time that these people were speaking in tongues. I thought, what's that? And it was very uncomfortable. I still remember that, but still intrigued me enough. You see that mischievous side of, where's this going? That kind of excited me. So anyway, I never really got into a church, but I would hear all the different messages, and it was a little different, of course, the Bible that you need. It's to me, as a Catholic, it's understood. God exists, and you need Jesus as your Savior and do good works, right? It's not put as bluntly. So maybe subconsciously I understood that, but later on, somebody gave me the straight goods of the gospel. We're sinners, we need Christ. That's this, so it made sense to me. So, I thought I accepted Christ. So as I went through life selling cars and trying to improve, it was always, okay, I get it, and I'd be excited and I'd try to be that good person and then slowly fall back off the wagon and then be thankful that God is forgiving. So then it was a few years and I lost contact with, his name was Don, and I was again in a crossroads wondering what I should do. And this was kind of funny, so a phone call. So I said a prayer, I said, Lord, help me out, and I'm so thick, just hit me on the side of the head with a frying pan so that I know that this is the direction. So anyway, I get a phone call from Don, who got out of car sales and ended up being a outreach pastor for this Victory Church. And he phones me up for some reason and says, hey, we have this house. They had these houses and they take people off the street, put them in the house, and then kind of hopefully they get into Bible school or whatever. But for some reason he phoned me up and I said, you know what you should do, Don? You should start a business and train these guys to work, have the practical side as long as the godly side, and bring them back into society. So he says, well, why don't you do it? And I said, no, I'm not interested. And actually, as I said before in my VR, I had chimney sweep business at that time. I kind of let it go, but I still had the equipment. So I said, why don't you start a chimney sweep business? So long story short, I ended up doing that. And that was just before I got married, and we ended up doing it for probably 2 years. So it was quite a interesting thing, because I thought, these pastors, especially the pastors that were living for God, would have, fear. So I thought they had a direct line to God. And, I was pretty naive when it came to just how God operates. And I was probably at that time about 20. So anyway, we did an outreach and a lot of evangelistic. So we did start the chimney sweep business, and I would just work with these guys almost like an apprenticeship and mentor them. We'd have a Bible study in the morning. And I was so freaked out that I was working for God. I read that Bible like crazy. I wanted to make sure that these people under my care, that I didn't lead them astray or some weird things. So in there was some great stories and some success stories. But the political side of the church is what I was unexpected for. It was actually no different than the world. Like, you'd have pastors competing, and it was charismatic Pentecostal, and there was a lot of they had different factions of different ways people believed. Some believed in prosperity and all this. So it was very, what I was reading in the Bible didn't really match up. So eventually I ended up leaving that and getting back into the world. So through that, all that though, that's how I got into plumbing. One of the guys that was a member of that church happened to be a plumbing inspector and said, you know, maybe you should get into plumbing. So I did, and then in that time we got married, and so I would have been 26. And then I just stayed away from the church. That was kind of like, I just didn't go to church anymore. I just thought, well, I'm just going to live practically, right? Do my best, just like a normal person. So basically from 26 all the way through, I, had my career, had 3 kids, and just lived a normal life. I never really, there'd be blips of there where I would be hot and cold, where I'd get excited for God again. We'd go out and do some evangelism, which I really kind of liked. And our evangelism was more just going out like the evangelism explosion and talking to people and seeing what their views were, and then kind of, just sort of trading information and seeing if people kind of understood the gospel, trying to make it a little more clearer. And did that again, salt and peppered throughout those 20 years. So as I had kids and stuff, that's where it started to hit me again. And I said, well, what do I stand for? Where's my philosophy? Like with my family, we went every week, and basically throughout my kids, well, they actually went to Catholic school. They still do, but we didn't go to church as much. I just couldn't. We would start, we would stop. We would start, we would stop. So it was very sporadic. And anyway, as we were going through one day, I was thinking to myself, what can I give my kids as a philosophy? Like, what do I really stand for? Do I believe that there's a God? How come my actions aren't? How come I actually love fly fishing more than I love God? And really, if God exists and He's real, we should love Him. Obviously for all the things that He's given us, but I honestly, when I looked at myself, just didn't have it, and I'm thinking there's something wrong with that, and I'm a Christian, and I believe I've checked all the boxes, and I'm trying my best, right? But I just didn't feel a real connection, and so I started just to question myself and kind of look for it. So I said another prayer there, and I said, Lord, what's wrong? There isn't a love. I actually do love fly fishing more than, I love you. And so anyway, we went camping. We're doing our usual thing, and this is quite interesting. So we end up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we usually camp, like I said, in near Sandpoint there. And so we're walking through, and of course, I've seen them before, and we've kind of did it over the past, but not as blatant, we'll say, as this guy. And he was preaching in the open air, the gospel. He had a Bible in his hand, he's giving out tracts, and he's preaching. So I'm thinking, hey, this is kind of cool. I said, let's sit down and watch this guy, And my wife goes, hey, we're on holidays, let's just keep going. And I said, oh, okay. So as we're walking by, he's turned the other way, and he's preaching. Like he's doesn't even know we exist, and just happened to walk by, and his son or little guy was giving out tracts. So I grabbed the tract. I said, hey man, good job, you're preaching to the choir, blah, blah, blah. We walked off. And while we're walking away, I hear in the background, he goes, the wrath of God abides on you. And so at the time, I heard those words, but those out of his sermon, those are the words that stuck. And as I'm walking away and taking the tract, I'm thinking, I'm saved. I go, why would that even ring? Like, I mean, it just felt like it stayed there. You know how words in slow motion just kind of stay there. So anyway, we went on the holiday, and those words were like, they sat here and they were like penetrating oil, and they just went deeper and deeper and deeper, and they wouldn't let go. So the whole trip and the next few months, these words are sitting there, and I said, God, Lord, why are those words sticking with me? I'm a Christian. I know I need Jesus as my Savior. Like, I'm free from that, technically. And so anyway, I took a look at the tract, and the tract happened to be Ray Comfort. I don't know if some of you guys are familiar, but they take the Ten Commandments and basically, say, have you ever lied? Have you ever stole anything? Have you ever, lusted after a woman, coveted, all this stuff, right? And so I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, yeah, heard it before, like it didn't really hit, right? And that with the, those words, the wrath of God abides on you. So I'm thinking, Jesus, God loves us, all this. But so then all of a sudden, I don't know why I did it, but I sit there and I go, okay, let's just, for fun, if this is true, if that's the standard, God's 10 commandments, and if I line myself up, because I always just thought God, worked on a curve. I honestly did. And so I said, hypothetically, I'm going to play the game. So I read the 10 commandments, and of course I failed on every single one. Maybe adultery, physically I haven't done that, but mentally, all guys, I think, go down that path, but that's another thing. Anyway, so I failed on all of them. And I'm going, wow. So, and then it hit me. Like, you're in trouble. Like, if this is true, you are done. God doesn't grade on a curve. He's holy. He didn't lower his standard. That's the standard. So for the first time in my life, my eyes were opened. I was actually scared. I had the fear of God. I thought, a holy, righteous God, and here I am, there's my place. For the first time, I realized why we need Jesus, because it's impossible. There's no way through works, through anything, that we can appease God. That it is so impossible. You're in trouble. So if that was true, bang, I was guilty, I'm done, there's no way. And then the Beatitudes hit me, right? Blessed are those who mourn. I never understood that. But I was mourning about my sin because I realized how spiritually deprived that I was. Like it was like my eyes were open. Something happened inside here that was really weird. So anyway, I just, boom, dropped to my knees, saw my thing, repented, said, sorry, Lord, and just, I was scared. So anyway, right, mourn, and the Beatitudes made sense to me. There was a real change, like an eye-opening. So I thought to myself, I'm not even going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything on what happened to me, and I was contemplating this. And you know how you have a desire, like I had more of a desire to fly fish, to do things. That desire came from inside. When it came to things of God, it was like a workout program. I always had to make myself do it. I was always fear of a consequence. But after that situation happened, I actually had a desire to read the Word. I had a desire to seek God like I did for fly fishing. I had a desire to kind of tell people about God. I had a desire to read His Word. I had a desire to pray. I used to just pray whenever. Now I actually had a desire to talk to God. So I thought, that's weird. That might be, again, just one of these things. So I ended up testing it. And, my family, they noticed a difference. I was kinder. I was actually doing things than I wanted to. Before, it was like, I was pretty selfish and typical male. But I started to do these things. I even look back and go, where'd that come from? So what happened was I felt like I really had a change of heart. There was nothing like words, but inside there was a change. And I had the desire to read the Word. So I started at the beginning. And it was like God took me on his knee and said, "This is the word." And I never read it now with trying, I always use the Bible to get my way sort of thing or justify my actions. And this time I just read it. And it was a lot different from the way that I originally understood it. So my life, you know, as far as on a spiritual thing, has just changed. I have a real desire to pray, to read the word, to, you know, I'm still working on the, you still fail. But you know what really hit me was, and this is probably the thing that's the greatest thing, is it really put me in my place where I am in God's eyes and why I need a Savior. But at the same time, when I look out in the world and people frustrate me and do this, I look at them and I am no different. Like maybe I haven't, you know, I failed all the 10 commandments, but maybe people do different things, but I believe we're still all in the same boat. We're all guilty. So, you know, lying, this and that, it's all sort of the same. So you can't go out and point to somebody else because you're pointing at yourself. So I just felt really more merciful, more patient with people. And, you know, I wanted to talk to them about the gospel. But, you know, there's more to it than that. But, you know, just had that desire. And not to say that, hey, look, you know, it's like being a non-smoker or a smoker and then being a non-smoker and getting mad at people that smoked before. You know, I'm still a sinner. It's by grace and by mercy that I've been saved, not by anything that I did. I really understand that. So somebody else that might not be there or that hates God or this, they might not have had that time. It took me, I was 48 when that happened. So you know, I got another story as things with meeting different evangelists and stuff like that. But anyway, it really changed my life in that realm and has given me a comfort and a joy that is hard to explain. But I thought I would just share that. So yes, and you know, there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the highlights. But I wish you all the best. And you know what? I do wish that people would take just look into it for yourself, or talk to people that you respect and really find out. Because you know what? In the grand scheme of things, understanding where we stand with God and believing or not believing in God is very, very important. That is probably the most important decision that any human being can make. So of all the things that we should do, I think we should really look into the Bible. I'm glad for people out there that guy challenged me, you know, and really made me look into things. So even, like I keep saying, even when you have a difference of opinion, if you can have a conversation, it really makes people think. Not everybody's going to come to that same conclusion, but I think that's what we're here for, to discuss things and to try to help one another or see a different perspective. Anyway, thank you for watching this super long video, and I wish you all the best, and take care.